Welcome to today's deep dive, where we're going to get into some pretty amazing chemistry stuff. The kind of stuff that'll make you the head of any party, honestly.
Absolutely.
We'll be covering everything from the chemistry behind vaping to how food presentation, totally messes with our brains.
Yeah, it's really wild how much chemistry is just hidden in plain sight in our everyday lives.
I know, right?
And this deep dive is going to really bring those connections to light.
Love it. So one of the first things that really caught my eye was this whole thing about the FDA having this secret list of words, words drug companies can't use in their branding.
It's true. It's kind of funny, right?
It is.
Words like cure, safe, even magic are completely off limits.
Wow.
It's all about, keeping things real and making sure consumers aren't misled by claims that are, well, too good to be true.
Yeah, that makes sense. So speaking of keeping things real, apparently our livers are working overtime. Not only do they process everything we eat and drink, but they also have their own internal clock that impacts how they metabolize medications.
That's right. And that really emphasizes how important timing is when it comes to how well a medication works. Did you know that some cholesterol meds actually work best when you take them at night?
Really?
Yep, because that's when our livers are the most active in breaking down cholesterol.
Wow, so we should all be paying more attention to when we take our meds. I had no idea. This deep dive is already full of surprises. Speaking of surprises, did you know some medications can actually make us smell things that aren't really there?
Yeah. It's called phantosmia.
Phantosmia.
It's a fascinating example of how meds can sometimes mess with our brain chemistry.
Wow.
Antidepressants and antipsychotics are particularly known to cause this. They essentially make your brain create the perception of smells that aren't real.
So you're smelling phantom smells.
Yeah.
That's both creepy and kind of cool.
I know, right?
Speaking of cool, we also learned about CBD, that non-psychoactive compound in cannabis that everyone's talking about. Apparently, it can actually counteract the effects of THC, the part that gets you high.
That's right. CBD and THC actually compete for the same receptor sites in the brain.
Huh.
So CBD basically acts like a brake on THC's psychoactive effects. This has gotten a lot of researchers interested in using CBD to manage the unwanted side effects of cannabis use.
Wow, that's fascinating. And speaking of fascinating discoveries, did you know our brains actually produce their own version of cannabis?
It's true. It's called anandamide.
Anandamide.
It plays a role in regulating things like mood, pain, and even appetite.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing, right? Our own internal chemistry mirroring substances we find in nature.
Yeah. This deep dive is really making me think about how incredibly powerful and complex our internal chemistry is. But it's not all about what's going on inside us, right? We also learned about some big developments in reproductive health, like the male contraceptive pill that's in development.
That's right. It's a big step forward, and it's all thanks to advances in 3D mapping of the P2X1 receptor, which is involved in sperm transport.
Okay.
This new approach is non-hormonal and aims to target sperm movement specifically, which could potentially minimize the broader systemic effects sometimes associated with hormonal contraceptives.
That's huge. It's great to see how scientific advancements are opening up new options in reproductive health. And speaking of amazing discoveries, did you know there's a genetic mutation that lets some people eat tons of sugar without their blood sugar spiking?
Yeah. It's a rare mutation, but it's super interesting to researchers because it gives them clues about how we regulate blood sugar.
So they can basically eat all the dessert they want.
Pretty much. Studying these cases could help us develop new treatments for diabetes and other metabolic disorders.
That's like having a superpower.
Yeah.
But okay, let's switch gears for a second and talk about something that might gross some people out. The FDA's action levels for things like insect fragments and rodent hairs in our food.
Well, it's a good reminder that absolute purity is basically a myth. Yeah.
The FDA knows it's just not possible to eliminate every trace of these natural contaminants from our food.
Okay.
So they set thresholds that are considered safe and focus on preventing levels that could actually pose a health risk.
Right.
It's all about balance, between safety, practicality, and affordability.
It makes sense, but it's definitely something I'll be thinking about next time I open a bag of chips. Speaking of things that make you think, there's a crazy story about a cancer drug called Krebiozen that was approved and then later found to be totally useless.
Yeah, the Krebiozen case is a stark reminder of how important rigorous scientific testing is and how drug regulations have evolved over time.
Right.
It was marketed as a miracle cure, but it turned out to be nothing but hype and false hope.
Wow.
This case actually led to stricter regulations around drug approval to protect people from treatments that are ineffective and could even be harmful. It's a good reminder to always be critical of medical claims and to look for evidence-based information. But speaking of innovative approaches to medicine, the concept of biased agonism is really intriguing.
Yeah, biased agonism is a pretty cool new approach to drug development, where
Mhm.
scientists design drugs to selectively activate only the beneficial pathways of a receptor while avoiding the negative side effects.
So you're getting the good without the bad.
Exactly.
That's amazing. It's like designing a key that only unlocks the specific functions we want and minimizes the unintended consequences.
Exactly.
It's so exciting to think about how this approach could change medicine as we know it. And speaking of changing the game, CRISPR gene drives are another technology that has everyone in the scientific world buzzing.
CRISPR gene drives have the potential to completely transform how we deal with things like disease vectors and invasive species.
Oh, wow.
They're designed to spread specific genetic traits through populations, which could be incredibly powerful for controlling things like mosquito-borne illnesses or managing invasive species that are messing up ecosystems.
It sounds powerful, but also kind of scary.
It is. It's important to remember that with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Absolutely.
There are a lot of ethical and ecological concerns surrounding the use of gene drives. It's essential to move cautiously and do thorough research to understand the potential impacts.
A good reminder that scientific advancements often come with complex ethical and societal questions.
Definitely.
But okay, let's take a step back from all that serious stuff and talk about something a little more relatable. The science of eating with our eyes.
Oh, that's a fun one.
I know, right? So it turns out our visual perception plays a huge role in how we experience food.
Oh, absolutely.
The way a dish is presented, its color, the plating, even the ambiance, can create expectations in our brains that actually influence how we taste the food.
It's amazing how our senses work together to shape our perception of the world.
So a beautifully plated dish might actually taste better just because our brains are primed to enjoy it.
Exactly. That's why so much artistry goes into creating a truly memorable dining experience.
That's incredible. It's not just about the ingredients, it's about the whole sensory experience.
Exactly. Food is more than just sustenance. It's a cultural and social experience that engages all of our senses.
And speaking of engaging our senses, did you know there's a cannabinoid, THCV, that actually suppresses appetite? It's the opposite of the munchies.
It's true. While THC increases appetite, THCV does the opposite.
Huh, that's interesting.
This has gotten a lot of researchers excited about its potential for weight loss and diabetes treatments. It's a perfect example of how different compounds within the same plant can have totally opposite effects on our bodies.
Nature's pharmacy is full of surprises.
It is. There are so many compounds out there with potential therapeutic benefits, and we're only just beginning to uncover their secrets.
This deep dive is reminding us that there's always more to learn, more connections to uncover, and more potential solutions waiting to be discovered in the world of chemistry. It's an ongoing journey of exploration and discovery.
Absolutely. It really is a journey, and that journey actually takes us back in time, too. Yeah. Modern analytical techniques are allowing us to revisit these ancient medicinal texts and botanical extracts, and it's leading to some pretty cool rediscoveries of remedies people used way back when.
Like uncovering lost secrets from the past. So what kind of remedies are we talking about?
Well, for example, researchers are finding potent bioactive compounds in these old texts, stuff with potential to treat all kinds of diseases, infections, inflammatory conditions, all sorts of things.
Wow. So like nature has been a pharmacy for centuries.
Exactly. And we still have so much to learn from traditional knowledge.
That's amazing. Speaking of hidden knowledge, I was super intrigued by this mention of a receptor in our bodies, GPR17, that seems to respond to both metabolism and inflammation. What's the deal with that?
Honestly, GPR17 is a bit of a mystery to scientists. We know it reacts to both metabolic and inflammatory signals, but we aren't totally sure why or even what its main function is. It does suggest there's a deeper connection between those two processes than we thought, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it really makes you think, right? Like maybe what we eat impacts how our bodies fight infections in ways we don't even realize. The
Exactly.
human body is so complex. On that note, we also learned about a drug that can have a pretty scary side effect, causing bones to become so brittle they can break under minor stress.
Right. That's the downside of long-term corticosteroid use.
Okay.
These medications are great for treating inflammation, but if you use them for too long, it can lead to steroid-induced osteoporosis, which basically weakens the bones.
Yikes. Definitely a reminder that all meds have potential risks and benefits.
Absolutely.
It's so important to talk to your doctor and weigh those carefully.
No.
Speaking of risks, there was mention of a compound called ketene that forms when you heat up certain synthetic cannabinoids during vaping.
Yeah, that's a concerning one.
It is.
Ketene is a super toxic gas, and inhaling it can be really dangerous.
Wow.
This discovery has raised some red flags about the safety of certain vaping products, particularly those with synthetic cannabinoids, which aren't regulated as strictly as natural cannabis products.
Definitely something to keep in mind. It seems like vaping, in general, is still an area where we're figuring out all the potential risks. And speaking of things we're still learning about, this next one is wild. Did you know the FDA once almost banned bananas?
It sounds crazy, right?
It does.
But it's true. Bananas naturally have compounds that look a lot like man-made pesticides.
Really?
Yep. This obviously raised some concerns, but after some careful analysis, they determined that these compounds are naturally occurring and totally safe for human consumption.
So it's not always about a scary-sounding name.
Exactly. It's all about understanding the context and the science.
It's like, don't judge a banana by its chemical compound.
Exactly. Speaking of understanding the science, there's a term that came up in the material. Chemophobia.
Chemophobia.
Yeah, the fear of chemicals, which is pretty common these days. You see marketing terms like chemical-free everywhere, which scientifically makes no sense.
It doesn't. I mean, everything is made of chemicals, right?
Right. Water is a chemical, air is a chemical, we're made of chemicals.
Exactly. So chemophobia is more about a lack of understanding of chemistry than like a real danger.
Exactly. This deep dive is all about moving beyond those simplistic labels and embracing a more nuanced understanding of chemistry.
I like that.
And remember, the dose makes the poison. A chemical can be harmful in high amounts, but totally fine in lower doses.
That's a really good point. Context is everything. This deep dive is making us think critically, question our assumptions, and look for reliable information. Now, this next one really blew my mind. Apparently, our spinal cords can learn without any input from our brains.
It's true.
Really?
Research has shown that the spinal cord can do basic learning and memory stuff, even when it's not connected to the brain.
So our limbs have their own mini brains.
In a way, yeah. It's pretty amazing.
It really is. This deep dive is full of surprises. Speaking of surprises, there was this mention of these mysterious receptors in our bodies called orphan receptors. What are those all about?
Orphan receptors are these receptors that, well, we don't know what activates them naturally.
Oh, interesting.
Scientists are basically playing detective, trying to figure out which compounds they respond to.
Like a scientific treasure hunt.
Exactly. And the prize could be finding treatments for diseases we currently have no cure for.
That would be amazing. Cracking the code of an orphan receptor could lead to some seriously groundbreaking therapies. But of course, drug development isn't always a straight path to success, right? Sometimes drugs are approved and then pulled from the market because of unforeseen risks.
That's right. The case of Laetrile is a good example.
Okay.
It was marketed as a cancer cure, but it turned out to be ineffective and potentially dangerous. It just highlights how important ongoing research is, even after a drug has been approved.
Right. Science is a constantly evolving process. We're always learning new things, and sometimes that means changing our understanding of what's safe and effective. But sometimes it means finding new ways to use existing drugs. Right.
Exactly.
Like how some beta blockers, which are usually for heart conditions, are now being explored for their potential to treat PTSD.
That's right. Some studies show that these beta blockers might be able to lessen the emotional intensity of traumatic memories, which could help reduce the negative impact of PTSD. It's amazing how a drug designed for one thing can have such unexpected benefits in another area.
The human body is full of surprises.
Yeah.
And speaking of surprises, some medications can cause people to smell like fish.
It's true. It's called trimethylaminuria, or fish odor syndrome.
Fish odor syndrome.
Yeah. It happens when your body can't break down a compound called trimethylamine, which has a fishy smell.
Makes you appreciate the balance of our biochemistry. Even a small disruption can have some strange and unexpected consequences.
It really can.
And speaking of strange and unexpected, did you know some people are genetically immune to hangovers?
It's true. Some people have a genetic variation that makes their bodies break down acetaldehyde way more efficiently than others.
Acetaldehyde.
Yeah, it's the chemical that causes hangovers.
Ah, so they can party all night without paying the price the next morning? Lucky them. It's fascinating how our genes can influence our responses to things in such a big way. This deep dive is making me think about the future of personalized medicine. Imagine tailoring treatments to our unique genetic makeup. That would be amazing. But okay, before we get too futuristic, let's talk about something a little less glamorous.
Mm.
The FDA's legal limits on how much filth is allowed in our food.
Yeah, not the most appetizing topic, but important nonetheless.
Right.
The FDA has rules about things like insect fragments, rodent hairs, and mold in processed foods.
Okay.
These regulations are there to protect public health and make sure our food is safe.
Makes sense, but I'm definitely curious about how they come up with those limits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about finding that balance between, practicality and safety.
Right. We don't want to be eating bugs, but a few stray hairs probably won't hurt us.
Exactly. They have testing methods and standards to ensure that those contaminants stay within safe limits.
It's a good reminder that food production is a complex process. Speaking of complex processes, this next one is a bit of a head-scratcher. Apparently, there's a drug that can turn your sweat, tears, and urine bright orange.
That's rifampin. It's a tuberculosis drug.
Rifampin.
It's a great treatment, but it has that unusual side effect of turning bodily fluids orange.
Wow.
It's harmless, but I bet it leads to some interesting conversations.
I can only imagine. But hey, if it's saving lives, a little orange discoloration is a small price to pay. Speaking of interesting side effects, did you know that Viagra can make some people see the world in blue?
Yeah, it's called cyanopsia.
Cyanopsia.
It's a rare side effect, but it happens because Viagra messes with an enzyme in the eye that helps with color perception.
So it's like having a blue light filter on, but in real life.
Mhm.
That's both weird and kind of cool.
It is. It's a good example of how medications can have these unexpected effects on our senses. Speaking of unexpected, this next one sounds straight out of a superhero movie. Pyrolytic carbon.
Okay, now you have my attention.
So pyrolytic carbon is super diamagnetic, meaning it's actually repelled by magnetic fields.
It's like anti-magnetic.
Exactly. And this property makes it useful in a lot of applications, from artificial heart valves to spacecraft heat shields.
Wow, so it's both life-saving and space-worthy.
Exactly. It's a pretty remarkable material.
I'll say. This deep dive is making me realize that the world of materials is way more interesting than I ever thought. Speaking of cool materials, what about nitinol? It's that shape memory alloy that can remember its original shape and revert to it when heated.
Ah, nitinol.
Yeah.
It's an alloy of nickel and titanium, and its properties are amazing. Like in medicine, they use nitinol stents that can be inserted into blood vessels all compressed, and then they expand to their full size once they warm up to body temperature.
Wow, that's like tiny robots working inside our bodies.
Ah.
Amazing. Speaking of things that sound like they're from sci-fi, the material mentions something called cold welding.
Ah, yes, cold
Now,
welding.
what is that exactly?
It's a process that can happen in a vacuum where two pieces of metal will just bond together without any heat or pressure.
What? How does that even work?
In a vacuum, there's no oxide layers or any contaminants on the metal surfaces, so when they touch, their atoms can bond directly.
So it's like they're instantly attracted to each other at an atomic level. That's crazy. It's amazing what can happen in the absence of, well, stuff.
It is. It's a cool example of how environmental factors can really change chemical reactions.
It makes you wonder what else is happening out in the vacuum of space. Speaking of space, did you know that when lightning strikes skin, it can leave behind these fractal burn patterns called Lichtenberg figures?
Yeah, they're also called lightning flowers or skin feathering. They make these intricate patterns that look like branches on a tree. It's a pretty dramatic example of how electricity interacts with the human body.
It's incredible how nature can create such intricate patterns, even in the most unexpected places. But okay, let's shift from Earth to the cosmos for a second. The source material mentions something called nuclear pasta, which is supposedly the densest and strongest material in the universe.
Nuclear pasta.
Nuclear pasta.
Yeah. It's found in the crusts of neutron stars.
Neutron stars.
And it forms under the immense pressure of gravity. It's so dense that a teaspoon of it would weigh billions of tons.
Billions of tons in a teaspoon.
It really stretches our understanding of matter and what it can withstand.
It really does. This deep dive is taking us from the smallest molecules to the most extreme objects in the universe. Okay, let's bring it back down to Earth for a moment and talk about something a little more familiar.
Smog.
Smog.
What's the chemistry behind this hazy air pollution that we see in so many cities?
Smog is a mix of different pollutants,
Yeah.
ground-level ozone, nitrogen oxides, volatile organic compounds,
Okay.
and sunlight triggers chemical reactions between them, basically creating a toxic cocktail in the air. That sounds pretty awful. And it can have some serious health effects, right?
It can, unfortunately.
It's a good reminder that chemistry isn't just happening in labs. It's all around us.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to understand those processes so we can protect our environment and our health. Speaking of protecting people, the source material mentions the FDA's efforts to prevent misleading drug
Oh,
names.
yeah?
Yeah. Apparently, they have this whole secret list of words that drug companies can't use in their branding.
A secret list of banned words for drugs. That's kind of fascinating. What kind of words are we talking about?
Things like cure, safe, or even magic, they're all off limits.
I guess those words could create unrealistic expectations about a drug.
Exactly. And that could mislead consumers, which is obviously not good.
It's like a game of banned words, but with real-life consequences. This deep dive is really showing us that language matters, especially when we're talking about science.
It really does. The words we choose can shape perceptions and influence decisions.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has been a fantastic exploration of chemistry, and we've learned a lot.
We have.
Now it's up to us to use that knowledge wisely and keep exploring. It's amazing how much we've covered, right? And it really hits you how we often think of science as this set-in-stone thing when really it's constantly changing.
I know. This deep dive has totally shown me that science is all about, like, asking questions and being open to new discoveries, even if they completely change what we thought we knew.
Exactly. And speaking of surprising discoveries, did you know there's a metal that can melt in your hand?
Wait, what? Really? What kind of metal does that?
It's called gallium.
Gallium.
It melts just a bit above room temperature, so if you hold it, the heat from your hand will actually melt it.
That's crazy. It's like something straight out of a magic show.
It is pretty wild. And speaking of cool properties, have you ever heard of thermochromic materials?
Thermochromic materials.
They're the things that make, like, those mood rings that change color.
Oh, yeah, I remember those. They were
Cool.
so cool.
They use thermochromic materials. The colors change depending on the temperature.
So you would have a coffee mug that changes color as your coffee cools down.
Exactly. There are all kinds of fun applications for these materials, and scientists are coming up with even more all the time.
It's amazing how chemistry can make such interactive stuff.
Yeah.
But let's go back in time for a minute. The source material mentions something called prebiotic chemistry, which explores how the building blocks of life first formed on Earth.
Oh, yeah, prebiotic chemistry.
Prebiotic chemistry.
It's a fascinating field. Scientists try to recreate the conditions of early Earth in labs to see how simple molecules could have spontaneously become more complex, the kind of organic compounds that are essential for life.
It's hard to even imagine those early chemical reactions that eventually led to everything we see today. Speaking of things that have had a huge impact on the world, what about nitroglycerin?
Oh, nitroglycerin is a classic. It was first discovered as an explosive, and it's still used in dynamite today.
Right.
But it also has medical uses, actually. Yeah, it's a powerful vasodilator. That means it widens blood vessels.
Wow.
It can be used to treat angina, among other things.
So the same stuff that can blast through rock can also help someone with chest pain. That's incredible.
It is. It just shows you how one chemical can have completely different uses depending on how it's used and controlled.
It really does. We need to understand both the good and the bad. Speaking of groundbreaking medical stuff, what about mRNA vaccines?
Oh, mRNA vaccines have been a game changer.
They really have.
Instead of using a weakened virus, they use messenger RNA.
Okay.
And that tells our cells to make viral proteins, which triggers an immune response.
So it's like giving our bodies the instructions to build their own defenses.
That's a great way to put it. And it's been super effective against a lot of different diseases.
It's amazing to see how science keeps pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Speaking of pushing boundaries, what about those high-entropy alloys? The ones made of 5 or more elements in almost equal amounts.
High entropy alloys are really cool.
They sound it.
They have some incredible properties, Super strength, wear resistance, and they're stable even in extreme temperatures. They're being looked at for everything from aerospace to energy production.
It's like combining the best of multiple metals into one supermaterial.
Yeah.
This deep dive is making me excited about the future of materials science.
It's a field that's just exploding with possibilities.
Think of tiny things with big impacts. What about microRNA?
Oh, yeah, microRNA.
Those little molecules play a big role in regulating genes,
Right.
even though they don't actually code for proteins.
Right. It's like they're these tiny switches that can turn genes on or off, affecting all sorts of cell processes.
Okay.
They're essential for things to develop and function normally, and when microRNA goes wrong, it can lead to disease.
It's amazing how much we're still learning about what happens inside our cells. And, okay, for the grand finale, graphene.
Graphene. It's amazing
The
stuff.
source material said it's just one atom thick, but it's incredibly strong, conductive, and flexible.
It really is remarkable. It could be a game changer for so many things. Electronics, energy, medicine. It's strong, it's conductive, it's flexible, and it's only one atom thick.
Wow, it sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. Makes you wonder what other incredible materials are still out there waiting to be found.
That's the beauty of science, right? There's always more to discover.
This deep dive has been an amazing journey through the world of chemistry. We've gone from the tiniest molecules to the biggest structures in the universe.
From ancient remedies to cutting-edge technology.
I know. It's been a whirlwind of cool facts and discoveries, and I hope our listeners are leaving with a sense of wonder and appreciation for the power of science.
Me too.
I know I am. I'm already looking forward to our next deep dive into the world of science. So until then, stay curious, keep exploring, and never stop asking questions.
That's the best way to unlock the secrets of the universe.